Breaking news, King Charles has just invoked a constitutional power not used in 47 years to completely block Keir Starmer's flagship reform bill. Parliament has erupted into absolute chaos. MPs are shouting, cabinet ministers are resigning, and Westminster insiders say this could trigger the biggest constitutional crisis since 1688. 3 senior Labour figures have already walked out. The pound is plummeting. And what Starmer said in a response, the exact words that leaked from number 10 just 11 minutes ago, could end his premiership before sunrise. If you want to understand what's really happening in Britain right now, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next will shock you to your core and the mainstream media won't dare tell you the whole truth. Here's what sparked this constitutional earthquake. Yesterday at 3:47 p.m, Starmer's Reform UK Electoral Systems Bill, designed to change how Britain votes forever, was heading for final approval in Parliament. His words were defiant, almost triumphant. This legislation represents the will of a modern, progressive Britain that refuses to be held hostage by outdated traditions. But King Charles wasn't having it. At precisely 4:12 p.m, the monarch invoked royal assent refusal. He didn't just delay the bill, he killed it outright. In a single stroke, Charles wielded a constitutional authority that hasn't been used since 1978, shattering Starmer's entire political agenda. The timing was deliberate, calculated, and absolutely devastating. Sources close to the palace revealed that Charles had been monitoring this legislation for weeks, consulting with Privy Council members and constitutional experts who warned him that this bill would fundamentally alter the balance of power in ways that could never be reversed. Within minutes of the King's decision, Parliament transformed into a war zone. Labour backbenchers were screaming at Conservative MPs across the chamber. Deputy Speaker Dame Eleanor Lang had to suspend proceedings 3 separate times because the shouting became so ferocious that no one could hear anything over the chaos. Witnesses inside the chamber described it as something from a different century, raw, primal fury. Conservative MP Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg stood at the dispatch box and declared with barely contained satisfaction, "The Crown has reminded this arrogant government that Britain is a constitutional monarchy, not a Labour dictatorship. His Majesty has done what millions of Britons have been begging for. He stopped this madness." The Conservative benches erupted in applause so thunderous it rattled the ancient walls. Labour MPs looked shell-shocked, disoriented and betrayed. Some were visibly shaking. Minister for Constitutional Affairs, Nick Thomas-Symonds, was seen storming out of the chamber, his face crimson, fists clenched, refusing to answer questions from anyone. But the real drama was happening in the corridors just outside the main chamber, where Labour whips were desperately trying to prevent a complete meltdown of party discipline. And here's where it gets even more explosive. According to multiple sources who were in the room, Starmer received the news of the royal refusal while meeting with his senior strategy team in the cabinet room. His immediate reaction, described by one witness as volcanic, sent shockwaves through everyone present. Starmer allegedly swept a stack of briefing papers off the table, turned to his chief of staff, Sue Gray, and said words that will haunt him forever. "That senile old man in his castle just destroyed everything we've worked for. He thinks he can turn back the clock to when kings actually mattered. We'll show him exactly how irrelevant the monarchy has become." The room fell into stunned silence. Even his most loyal advisers couldn't believe what they'd just heard. One cabinet minister present later told allies, "I've served under 3 prime ministers and I've never heard anyone speak about the monarch with such contempt. It was chilling." Within 2 hours, that quote had been leaked to 3 separate newspapers, clearly by someone in that room who wanted the British public to know exactly what kind of man now occupies number 10. Meanwhile, British veterans who served in the Falklands, Iraq and Afghanistan, men and women who gave everything for this country, are being told there's no money for proper healthcare or housing support. David Harrison, a 71-year-old former paratrooper from Stoke-on-Trent who lost his left leg in Northern Ireland, waited 9 months for a wheelchair ramp at his council flat. 9 months for basic dignity. I fought for this country, he told reporters, with tears streaming down his weathered face, and now I can't even get into my own home without crawling. While veterans like David suffer, Labour has allocated £8.4 billion over 3 years for migrant integration programmes, luxury hotel accommodations and legal aid for asylum appeals. We're talking spa facilities, flat-screen televisions and daily meal allowances that exceed what pensioners receive after 50 years of paying taxes. Margaret Ellis, a 73-year-old widow from Durham, whose husband died serving in the Royal Navy, receives £156 and 20 pence per week in state pension. That's £22 and 31 pence per day. Meanwhile, asylum seekers in government-contracted hotels receive food, accommodation and services valued at approximately £40 per day. Nearly double what Margaret gets after her husband gave his life for Britain. She heats only one room in her house during winter because she can't afford the energy bills. She eats one proper meal a day. And when she wrote to her Labour MP asking for help, she received a form letter about competing budget priorities. The contrast is so grotesque, so morally bankrupt, that even traditional Labour voters in working-class strongholds are openly revolting against Starmer's priorities. In pubs across the Midlands and the North, conversations that once defended Labour now speak of betrayal, of forgotten promises, of a party that abandoned the very people it was created to serve. But then something happened that nobody, not the pundits, not the pollsters, not even Buckingham Palace insiders saw coming. King Charles broke 70 years of royal protocol and addressed the nation directly. At 7:30 p.m. last night, broadcasters interrupted regular programming for an unprecedented live statement from Windsor Castle. Standing beneath portraits of Queen Elizabeth and King George VI, Charles looked directly into the camera and spoke with a gravity that sent chills through millions of viewers. I have today exercised a constitutional authority that I hope never to use, the King declared, his voice steady, but weighed with unmistakable resolve. But when legislation threatens the very foundations upon which our democracy rests, when it seeks to fundamentally alter the compact between Crown, Parliament and people without proper mandate, then silence becomes complicity. He paused, letting those words settle like stones. I will not be complicit in the dismantling of British constitutional tradition. Palace insiders revealed that Charles spent 3 days consulting constitutional scholars, former prime ministers and senior judges before making his decision. One source described the king as agonised, but absolutely certain that Starmer's bill represented an existential threat to the balance of power that has kept Britain stable for centuries. Former Prime Minister Sir John Major reportedly spent 90 minutes on the phone with Charles, walking him through the historical precedents and potential consequences. Lord Jonathan Sumption, one of Britain's most respected constitutional authorities, provided a detailed legal memorandum that Palace sources describe as devastating in its analysis of the bill's constitutional implications. The optics are absolutely devastating for Starmer. The sovereign himself, the one figure in Britain who transcends politics, has essentially declared Labour's flagship legislation dangerous and illegitimate. The domino effect was swift and brutal. Within 90 minutes of the King's speech, the pound sterling dropped 3.2% against the dollar, the sharpest single-day decline since Brexit. Currency traders in London, New York and Tokyo started dumping British assets, fearing prolonged political instability. Financial Times analysts estimated £1.8 billion was wiped from the FTSE 100 in a single trading session. By midnight, Labour's internal polling showed catastrophic results. Approval ratings dropped from 39% to 21% in just 8 hours. In key constituencies across the Midlands and North, places Labour desperately needs to hold, support collapsed by 19 percentage points. And Defend the King became the #1 trending topic globally, with over 4.7 million tweets in 12 hours. Protests erupted spontaneously across British cities. In Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham and Newcastle, crowds gathered outside Labour constituency offices demanding Starmer's immediate resignation. Some carried Union Jacks. Others held signs reading, "The Crown protects Britain" and "Starmer, modern traitor." In Leeds, over 3,000 people marched through the city centre chanting "God Save the King" while waving flags and holding photos of Queen Elizabeth. In Glasgow, traditionally a Labour stronghold, protesters burned an effigy labelled "Constitutional Traitor Starmer" outside the Scottish Parliament. A veteran Labour MP, Stephen Kinnock, admitted to the BBC, "I've been in politics for 20 years and I've never seen my own constituents turn on the party like this. They feel betrayed." But wait, because the international